He owns and operates the Pack-A-Day podcast that airs 365 days a year with over 12 million views on YouTube. A new adventure begins. It's time for the Pack-A-Day radio show with Andy Herman on 1250 AM and 105.7 FM The Fan, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook and on the free Odyssey app.
From the time I stepped foot into this building back in 1997 as an intern, like, it's never changed, right? That the only thing that we hang banners for, that we put up around this building is world championships, Super Bowls now. And everything that we do and we think about goes into that. I think our philosophy on that is we want to compete for them every single year. We want to be involved and relevant to compete for a championship every single year. So there are things that we do look at long term that way. I've never been a big believer to try to build up for a window. I never thought that's a wise thing to do. I want to be, try to be in this tournament every single year. But yeah, when you walk around this building and you talk to the different people, I think this goes throughout our building and how important winning championships is. I don't think that would, I don't think that would be something they would question.
Good morning, Milwaukee. Good morning, Packers Nation. Happy Thursday. Welcome into the Pack-A-Day radio show. My name is Andy Herman. We are live from the 1250 AM and 105.7 FM The Fan studios and powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. We've got a great show for you today. Matt Froehlich coming up 8:20 AM. He, of course, from the Pack-A-Day podcast. Excited to chat with him in a little bit here in about 20 minutes or so. Also would love for you to join the show. You can join us on the Nicolay Law Fan Talk and Text line 414-677-1250. Again, 414-677-1250. That was Brian Gutekunst, courtesy of Cheesehead TV. If you haven't checked out that full interview with Goody over there, I highly recommend doing so. But he says some interesting things in there. There were some comments recently from maybe another radio station that was basically like, Goody doesn't do enough to win. They don't care about winning. They just want it, whatever. We'll talk about that because I think it's an interesting topic of conversation. I actually want to hit on something that I think is a little bit more interesting in that blurb that we just heard from Brian Gutekunst, and that is his, let's just say, lack of desire to open a quote-unquote championship window, that he doesn't believe in championship windows. I want to discuss that in great detail as well. Before we get there, some news and notes certainly around the state of Wisconsin and just in sports in general. Tommy, the Brewers game yesterday, from a Brewers standpoint, obviously fantastic. Pick up the win. Mizorowski looks amazing again. Outduels Paul Skeens. You get the one inning with the Brewers getting to Skeens for 4 runs. I'm curious. We'll talk Brewers a little bit later as well when we, in our third segment here if we have the opportunity. But would you say that this game if you bought a ticket to this game, would it have lived up to the hype because you got an awesome Brewers win and Mizorowski pitched great, or would you say that you didn't quite get the pitchers duel that you were hoping for with Skeens and Mizorowski, so maybe you were disappointed? Like, how would you view that outing overall if you were buying a ticket to that game?
If you're a Pittsburgh fan, you were disappointed for sure. It's the first time Paul Skeens ever gave up 4 runs in an inning. He got absolutely showed up by a guy who has done it twice before that moment right there. Jacob Mizorowski and the Milwaukee Brewers absolutely come out victorious and look awesome during that performance. He has 8 strikeouts during that time. Andy, he has the 6th most 100-mile-an-hour pitches of all time from a starting pitcher already, and he has 16 innings of work. He has 3 hits allowed in 16 innings of work. He has 3 hits allowed, and he is 3-0 in Major League Baseball. Jacob Mizorowski, I'm going to say, I think I tweeted out yesterday, I don't think it's going to be just a Brewer thing with Jacob Mizorowski. I think by next year, he will be a top 10 jersey sale across MLB baseball.
I would not doubt it. I mean, he is special. The funny thing is like, where is he in the Brewers prospect rankings? Like number 4, I think he is in I'm very excited to see the top 3 ahead of Jacob Mizorowski. Right. If Jacob Mizorowski is the 4th best player on the Brewers farm system, so obviously that's ridiculous. He might be the best prospect and just might be the best player immediately in baseball right now. That's how good he's pitching at the moment. We'll see. Obviously, longevity plays into that, and see if he can do it consistently over a long stretch of time. But Man, through those first 3 games of Mizorowski, I don't know what more you could possibly want. He is going to be must-watch TV every time he's on. If he is pitching at home, get to that game. I mean, just go to that game because it is going to be that fun to watch. No, I think obviously from a Brewers standpoint, you go out to the ballpark yesterday, you get to see Mizorowski pitch like that. You get to see the bats get to Paul Skeens. That's exactly what you want. You know, even if Mizorowski goes 5, Skeens goes 4, maybe you're hoping again for a little bit more of a duel going later into the game. I don't know what more you could have possibly wanted from a Brewers standpoint, picking up a really fun 4-2 win. And not only, I think what I saw too is, I think he's already 4th in Major League history in 102 mile an hour pitches. Yes. So like it's like already up there for it's really remarkable. And it's going to be like 1 or 2 more starts before he probably is like first all time in 102 mile an hour pitches. It's going to go very, very fast at this point.
Andy, you made a great point there.
It's insane. It's remarkable.
When you said that, it is must watch TV. It's traditional that if you go to a Brewer game or you're watching it on TV, like when they're not hitting, I'm going to go do something. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm going to go to the kitchen. I'm going to go get something to eat, whatever it is. You don't want to miss him pitch. Like, you have to watch him pitch because it is so exciting. And even if he gets blown up in a start or doesn't do what you expect him to, the stuff is so gross. You have to watch every pitch because every pitch has an opportunity to be on Pitching Ninja and a top 10 highlight on SportsCenter.
I love how like Pitching Ninja is usually going to be like, here's the top 2 pitches from this like performance. This is like the whole outing is like a Pitching Ninja mixtape. Like it's remarkable to see what he's capable of doing. And like I said, just the fact that they're going to have him obviously for the foreseeable future, and then the rest of the farm system, the young players they have, Jackson Churio, etc. It's a really, really fun time, I think, to be a Brewers fan for not only now, but what this team could be moving forward. Hopefully they don't screw it up. Hopefully injuries don't get in the way, because this has the ability to be, I think, something special. And we're seeing certainly something special in real time with what he's able to accomplish. And certainly, like you said, it's not just a Milwaukee thing. Or already like the national media, like. Is there a chance that he could still get in the All-Star game? Like, is he like, that's like, he's going to get like 4 starts ahead of the All-Star game, maybe 5. But we've seen like things like this happen before where somebody's just like so dominant where even in a very short period of time, they can get in that conversation. Cause it's not just all of on voting. Like it's an interesting conversation as to like, should he probably like, might be that big of a star already, of just like put him in that game. He's deserving of it.
Well, Paul Skeens last year, I think, had 11 starts before he got into the All-Star game. And I don't think that he will be an All-Star this year, but he will make it maybe every other year he is healthy of his career. Yes.
It's an interesting, if you're trying to win that game, and I know you're not, it doesn't really matter, but like, I think he has to kind of just be on the roster. I think he's like that electric. I think you have to put it, and if you want to showcase your stars, I think he kind of needs to be in that game too. But I think you're probably right. I think it's probably not deserved for the guys who have played way more than that, but it's an interesting conversation nonetheless. Of course, the other thing that was going on, not necessarily from a Milwaukee standpoint, is we did have the NBA draft last night. We talked about it yesterday. I know you weren't necessarily going to make it must-watch TV. I did watch the entirety of the NBA draft. Thankfully, the draft ended right before my power went out last night, which was definitely a pain. But it was nice to see the draft in its entirety before we got out of there. There was nothing I didn't think like earth-shattering from the draft. I will say this, just taking it from a NFL standpoint, the Miami Heat and the Baltimore Ravens are the same exact franchise in that, like, just the best player, it doesn't matter where they pick, not the best player, obviously, but like one of the best players in the draft is going to fall to them every single time. And they're just going to be like, oh, thank you very much for having this happen. And we will gladly take it. The Ravens will pick like 20 something. They'll get like Kyle Hamilton. It just stupid. Like somebody good is going to fall to them every time. And in the Heat, they obviously get a player in Kasparas Yakuchonis. I'm going to mess up the last name, KJ, if you will. Getting him, who is a potential lottery pick, supposed to go in potentially even the top 10, maybe even like as high as number 8. Of course, he falls to number 20. Of course, he perfectly fits Heat culture. It's so annoying that some of these teams just get like these great players that just fall to them, like no matter what.
Yeah, and Con Knippel, I believe the highest drafted player out of the state of Wisconsin now after going 4th overall to the Charlotte Hornets.
Sure.
So good for him on that, too. That's an awesome story. Pretty much Milwaukee guy. I think he was Wisconsin Lutheran High School, somewhere around there. Wherever his brothers go to school is where he went to school. So he's from the Milwaukee area, and now obviously 4th overall gets to go hang out where he was hanging out already in North Carolina, being in Duke, and now just goes down the road to Charlotte.
Yeah, it's an awesome story for him, again, getting to just kind of stay in North Carolina, going from Duke to the Hornets, and then, of course, just, being all the way up there as the 4th overall pick. Then sort of the other interesting takeaways, some of these picks ending up in places that they don't want to go. Ace Bailey clearly did not want to be going to Utah, which you could tell from him. Colin Murray Boyles did not want to go seemingly to the Toronto Raptors. So just some interesting side stories to the draft as well. Of course, the Milwaukee Bucks pick tonight in the second round. We'll see what they end up with, and I'm sure discuss it a little bit tomorrow as well. But getting back to the Packers, getting back to what we heard from Brian Gutekunst there at the onset. Again, you're listening to the Pack-A-Day radio show live from the 1250 AM and 105.7 FM, the Fan Studios, and powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. There's two sides of this that I want to go into in pretty great detail here. The first is this idea that Goody does not care about winning, or they're just trying to, put a solid team together, or get people in the stands, or he's not trying to do everything that he can to get this team to a championship or anything like that, that this organization is focused on anything besides the ultimate goal of winning Super Bowls. And that aspect, I just could not disagree more. For anyone that spent any time talking to anybody within that organization, observing anything within the organization, this is not a team that is doing half measures to, get to where they're trying to go. And as Brian Gutekunst, I think, appropriately said, they're not hanging NFC North, banners. They're not doing anything besides only celebrating Super Bowls. 13-time world champions, obviously world champions before Super Bowls as well. But that's their goal. That's everything that drives that organization is based upon that. And heck, we heard it from Ed Policy. I know it was, sort of controversial in some of the things to some people, what he was saying, but his 3 things that he wants to do in his era. Number 1, and he said in order, number 1 is win. Number 2 is keep the Packers in Green Bay, which is a good focus to have if you're in that position. That's not, hyperbole or anything like that. That's a good focus to have in that position. And number 3 is to continue to build the bonds between the Packers and the city of Green Bay and the community that they reside in. Those are great things, but number 1 on his list is winning. This is an organization that very much cares about winning championships and is trying to put the best team together they can year in and year out to go out and do that. Now, you and me and every other Monday morning quarterback and, fantasy GM and everything like that may disagree with their order of operations and how they go about doing that. We can differ on some of those ideas, that's for sure. And Green Bay does sort of march to the beat of their own drum when they go about roster building, and they are kind of consistently looking towards not just 2025, but 26, 27, 28, 29 and beyond, which is not a bad thing to do, is to continue to look in the long term, as well as to try to put a team out there that's willing to be, or that is able to be, I should say, competitive year in and year out. This is a franchise and a team and a GM and a coach and an organization in totality that is solely focused on winning, getting to a Super Bowl, and trying to win a championship. Again, philosophical differences on how to get there, sure, but desire, it cannot be questioned. And I can state that again from being in those press conferences, talking to people within the organization, that desire is wholeheartedly there. However, what I will say is we did hear from Brian Gutekunst in that clip of how he does not believe in championship windows, that he wants to be in the tournament every single year. This is a very Ted Thompson-esque approach as well. And this is where I think some of that feeling comes from Packers fans of like, hey, you're just trying to get in the playoffs every year. You're not necessarily trying to win it. This is, again, a philosophical approach from Green Bay. I think there is a thought process within the organization and from the powers that be that in a tournament, specifically like this, in a one-game elimination tournament, it is a lot of times maybe less of exactly how your roster is built and more to do with which team gets hot and catches kind of fire at the right time, has the ball bounce their way a few times. And more often than not, if you can just get yourself in that tournament every single year, you're going to give yourself that opportunity to get hot at the right time, get the right matchups, and potentially win a Super Bowl. May not be every year, but the law of averages is if you're in it every single year, you can potentially get hot, go out, win a Super Bowl, and do that. And we kind of saw that in 2010. that was not a team that was all in by any stretch of the imagination. Now, they were somewhat aggressive, obviously signing Charles Woodson, leading up to that, signing Ryan Pickett. There were some moves that they made, but that was mostly a draft and develop team. They got lucky with some, sort of maybe undesirable players in other positions, meaning like guys like Tremont Williams, who was a flyer pickup years before. Cullen Jenkins, same thing. Sam Shields was an undrafted free agent. Guys like Charlie Peppera, Frank Zombo, they signed Howard Green midway through the season. Like there's a lot of players on that team that they just kind of, again, they hit gold with just picking them up kind of out of nowhere. But that was a team that, again, was not all in. They got into the dance. They got hot at the right time. They were not the most dominant team in the regular season. With a couple weeks left to go, they were still trying to just make their way into the postseason. Got there, got hot, won the games, get to the Super Bowl, beat the Steelers, and they pick up a championship. That's sort of what the idea that they're going for here. I will say that I wholeheartedly disagree with that philosophy. Not to say that I'm right and that the Packers are wrong, just a difference of opinions. But I don't think that you can go any more into the NFL and say, we don't believe in championship windows or we don't believe in going all in. Now, maybe there's a piece of Goody that's just not being totally forthcoming here, because in 2020, specifically in 2021, and even in 2022, they were pretty aggressive in keeping those teams together and continuing to add talent to those teams and kind of maxing out their credit card to try to keep those teams together. And whether we want to call it all in, I think it's pretty darn close to trying to go and win a championship during that, what I would say is kind of a 3-year window, and then kind of recognizing that after that point, they had to go in a different direction, move on from Aaron Rodgers, eventually move on from, Devontae Adams the year before that, and just kind of get to a point where they were a little bit more flexible and kind of were going to rebuild this thing. And as we saw the last 2 years, we're the youngest team in football. So I do think there is a little bit of cycle that Green Bay goes through, and I do think he's well aware of when they are competing for championships and when maybe it's more of a, whether you want to call it a rebuild or a soft reboot or however you want to view it. I think he's aware of it. So part of it may not be totally forthcoming from Brian Gutekunst, but I will say that just in general, that philosophy of not wanting to open a window, I think is a poor philosophy. And listen, nobody's apologizing for the Super Bowl in 2010 or saying that, they only have one to that extent. Like most franchises in all of sports would take that one championship, in whatever time period, right? But we're getting closer, here to about 30 years. From 1998 up until now, the Packers have only been in one Super Bowl. From 98 up until now, we're again getting almost a 3-decade, period of time from that stretch where they've only been in one Super Bowl. Now they won it. That's great. And they were able to get that championship again. Nobody's apologizing for it. But this is a team and a franchise that, whether it be via Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, now Jordan Love, in a almost 3-decade period of time, should be to more than one Super Bowl. And I think just saying that, hey, at some point we're going to get hot at the right time and we're going to get the ball bounce our way and we're going to get some injury luck or whatever, that does not necessarily just automatically work. It doesn't, hoping that the things fall your way the right way is not a great philosophy, in my opinion. And I think the difference now too is that even when the Packers won it in 2010, that was a 12-team tournament. I think adding 2 teams to that makes your odds go down even more of just, again, we're going to get, hot at the right time. It makes it that much tougher. There's more teams that are in it. You're one of 14 rather than one of 12. And I think the other thing that's changed quite a bit is you are seeing these teams every single year that are aggressive in going for it. I would say Philly last year was pretty darn aggressive, and they went out and won it. And that's not to say that that's a perfect philosophy either. You can go all win and lose spectacularly, and it's going to set your franchise back. And I think part of the thing of championship windows is you better be right of when your championship window is. If you're too early, I think the Bears, when they did it with Mitch Trubisky, they tried to open up that championship window too early before they knew if they had the quarterback or not. And yeah, they made a little bit of a run, but they get the double doink, it fails, and they never get anything close to even sniffing a Super Bowl while going all in what they thought was a window, and it wasn't. We've seen a team even like the Saints, who probably did have somewhat of a window with Drew Brees, try to keep it open, and they did it too long, and all of a sudden they are in complete purgatory because they were too aggressive in going for it when they didn't have the team that was supposed to go for it. And I could even make an argument that maybe Green Bay in 2022 probably did that a little bit too much and trying to keep that team together rather than blowing it up and kind of getting a little bit of a rebuild going a little bit sooner. So if you are going to do it, you better be right in the championship window that you are going after. And you can still fail, like we have seen at times, and it can come back to haunt you a little bit. And you're going to end up with some seasons that might be a little bit worse because you went a little bit more aggressive when it was open. But you're going to have a handful of teams almost every single year that are going all in and trying to win a championship. And it's really difficult if you're in the dance and you have not made that same level of effort by going all in and making those aggressive moves and trying to open a championship window. If you never do that, you're just a little bit behind the 8 ball from the 3, 4, 5 teams that do try aggressively every single year. So I think things have changed again with the amount of teams in the tournament. And we have seen this all-in philosophy work, not only in the NFL, but we've seen it in baseball. We have seen it in basketball. Like, you better be willing and able to open that window when it's there. It certainly worked for the Bucks when they had Giannis. And I know it hasn't necessarily worked since when they've tried to do some similar stuff, but going out and getting Drew Holiday, keeping the players that they had in Chris Middleton, Brooke Lopez, and trying everything that they could, sometimes successfully, sometimes failing, to put the right pieces around Giannis, it ultimately got them a championship in Milwaukee. And I think you do have to be a little bit more aggressive when the timing is right. And I'm not making the argument that right now is that time, but I think that's why you look at this team and say sometimes it just feels like there are some stones left unturned where they could still improve the roster, and they're maybe not doing so. And you could look at, maybe Green Bay's salary cap right now or some future draft picks they could use. Again, I'm not making the argument that this is the year to do that. But at some point, probably in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, I do think that window is going to be wide open for you to go out and win a championship. And I'm not saying, again, that they cannot do that this year and they can't win a championship this year. I'm not saying that they couldn't even make an aggressive move towards the trade deadline or the end of training camp to help this team out even more. But at some point, you're going to have to make that aggressive move. And if you don't, I think you're always going to be the bridesmaid and never the bride. And yeah, you're going to get in the dance, but I think you're going to see a lot of painful division round, wild card, and championship round losses that we've become very accustomed to and have seen over the course of the last 3 decades, other than in 2010. It's a difficult conversation. It's an interesting conversation. It's a philosophical one that, again, doesn't have a perfect answer. But for me, I think you do have to be a bit more aggressive with opening those championship windows, and not doing so gives me a little bit of fear that Green Bay may not be able to ultimately make that special run and actually win a championship, despite maybe the fact that they come close on a handful of different occasions. Close doesn't cut it. You actually want to bring that Lombardi trophy back to Green Bay. We'll see how Goody ultimately navigates the rest of the season, off season, and then, of course, the years moving forward as you do potentially get to that window with Jordan Love and company. And hopefully that window presents itself. That means that Jordan Love and the rest of this team is doing very, very well. And when that happens, we'll see if Goody is aggressive. And if not, if they ultimately continue to fall short, or if they can have that magical season where the ball bounces right, they get hot at the right time and bring that Lombardi back to Green Bay. We've got a lot more to get to. Matt Froehlich is coming up here in just a moment. If you missed anything all week long, right here on either the Pack-A-Day Radio Show, Wisconsin Sports Daily, the Mason Crosby Show, the Leadoff Show, anything that you might have missed, you can check it out over on thefanmilwaukee.com or on the free Odyssey app. Right now, 71 and mostly cloudy in Milwaukee, high of 74 today, low of 67. Some thunderstorms possible after 2 p.m. today, so keep an eye out for that. We'll be right back with Matt Froehlich in the Pack-A-Day Radio Show, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook, right after this. Welcome back to the Pack-A-Day Radio Show, live from the 1250 AM and 105.7 FM The Fan Studios, and powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Reminder that the Mason Crosby Show with Mitch Thunder Nellis is coming up next from 9 to 11. Also, Wade versus Diener is back for year 3. Join NBA stars Dwayne Wade and Travis Diener on June 27th for the Champions for Literacy celebration as they make an impact in Milwaukee and at Marquette. Tickets on sale at wadevsdiener.givesmart.com. Again, wadevsdiener.givesmart.com. Right now, we are being joined by my good friend Matt Froehlich, Pack-A-Day Podcast. You can find him on social media at Matt_Frey_. Matt, how the heck are you doing?
I'm doing great, Andy. We're a month away from training camp. It's finally not 95 plus degrees, which I do fall in the same camp as you. I heard you talking to Justice earlier this week. Definitely love the 90 plus and humidity over the cold. And my power didn't go out last night, so also very thankful for that.
Yeah, that was a pain. Had to get up early this morning and record today's podcast because just as I was ready to hit record yesterday, power completely goes out for a solid 2-3 hours. So that was not ideal, but we made it work nonetheless. And yeah, excited that everything's working appropriately today. So I get to talk to you and we get to go over not only Packers training camp, but everything that we kind of know about this team right now. Matt, I want to start in an interesting spot, a position that maybe in the past the Packers, maybe we didn't want to talk about because we didn't exactly know what it was going to be. But I think this Packers linebacker room is one that's actually pretty fun to talk about, primarily due to Edgerrin Cooper. But this is an interesting group from Quay Walker in a year coming off of, we saw signs that Quay could maybe break out this past year, which I think was a positive step for him. Edgerrin Cooper looked amazing. You have a 3rd round pick in Tyron Hopper. That's still an interesting lottery ticket. They bring back Isaiah McDuffie. Isaiah Simmons is an interesting player. How do you view this linebacker room and what they can potentially bring to the table in Green Bay in this upcoming season?
Yeah, I actually like the linebacker room quite a bit, especially with, bringing back McDuffie and then bringing in Isaiah Simmons. I know most fans, or at least, NFL draft people, like when Isaiah Simmons was coming out of Clemson, like huge player to get. I don't think he's lived up to that hype, but ultimately, like just another chess piece that the Packers are able to acquire. I don't know if he's going to start many games. Special teams would be awesome, but the athletic ability where you can move him around is going to be great. I'm glad you actually had this as a topic because I saw yesterday PFF put up that article about their top 10 units of linebackers. They obviously did the top 32. But Packers at 18th, I thought that was a little bit, underwhelming between, the upside that Edgerrin Cooper has and if Quay Walker can stay healthy. I feel like those are two very dynamic, young, athletic linebackers. And then you add in those pieces that I've kind of already mentioned, those veterans between the Isaiah twins. And then if Tyron Hopper can, contribute some way, I thought 18 was a little bit low. I mean, they're definitely in the top half in my opinion, but I'm excited. And I think exactly what you said, it was almost like over the last couple of years, maybe a decade, where it's like we kind of avoided the topic of conversation. Like, we might have a guy here or there, but really it's going to be these like fill-in guys that we're hoping can make some tackles and hoping can run some guys down. And generally they were stopping that over the last couple of years with some veteran free agents. Obviously the Devondre Campbell one sticks out as how impactful it was, but now that they're actually getting some homegrown guys and then adding in the back half of the depth chart with some of these veterans and guys that have been able to, keep on the roster like McDuffie, I'm excited for it. I think the sky's the limit. If Cooper and Quay can be on the same field at the same time in some fashion, I know there's conversation about maybe moving Quay to the outside a little bit, but like those two alone, I think could be a perennial, top 5 unit in the league by the end of the year.
Yeah, I do think, to your point, I think from Quay's standpoint, I think there still needs to be some strides there to potentially get to that point. But I do think that this is still a very exciting linebacking group. And I think with Jeff Hafley and how he utilizes these players, just having two complete freaks in Quay Walker and Edgerrin Cooper on your second level adds so much in and of itself. You have a little bit more of that kind of assignment sure guy that's going to play the position exactly the way that it's supposed to be played in Isaiah McDuffie. And then, like I said, a couple lottery tickets in Tyron Hopper and Isaiah Simmons. And for me, this is as fun of a group. I don't know that there's ever been a group where there's not a single player on the entire depth chart going into camp that I don't like or am not intrigued by in some way, shape, or form. Like Christian Welch, we saw last year, is a very good special teams player and as like a fifth, sixth linebacker, gives you exactly what you want, kind of in that Eric Wilson mold of, yeah, you can go out there and play linebacker if you need him to. You probably don't want him out there a ton, but if you need to, it's not going to be something that's like terrible. And in the meantime, he's going to give you great special teams. And John Johnson is actually one of the more fun undrafted free agents on this entire team. So just the group in its entirety, there's no fluff there. Like everyone's there for a reason. I think there's going to be some fun competitions between Isaiah Simmons, Christian Welch, and Jamon Johnson on the back end. I think even the starting spots, at least that third spot with, I think McDuffie, Simmons, Hopper are all going to be competing for that. Just think it's a really fun group overall. And for the first time in a long time, I look at the linebacker group and I'm not just like, oh, what's happening here?
Yeah, I think it's fun. I'm hoping Tyron Hopper can, come into his own. I think every time I hear that he was reminded, I should say, that he was a 3rd round pick, it's like, dang, really? They took him in the 3rd round. Now it's still that just shocking to me. So hopefully he can come into his own. But I agree, like you go all the way down to that 6th spot, and it's still impressive with like Welch and a couple of the UDFA guys you mentioned.
We're being joined by Matt Froehlich, Pack-A-Day Podcast. You can find him on social media at Matt_Frey_. Let's go to the offensive line. I want to touch base on Jordan Morgan for a little bit because I think this is going to be one of the players that is really one of the most intriguing to keep an eye on during training camp. We already know left tackle is where he's been working the most, and he and Rasheed Walker seem destined for a battle for left tackle coming up in camp. I still think he's going to have some say at potentially right guard with Sean Ryan as well. There's obviously that conversation of like, hey, did the Packers, waste a 1st round pick because he's not out there start? I think he's going to have a real opportunity to play this year. Even if he ends up being the 6th guy, I think he's going to get in there. I'm excited about Jordan Morgan in year 2, but where do you view this offensive line battle and what Morgan can bring to the team in year 2?
Yeah, I'm excited for it, especially with just some, young guys that are competing. We're not worried about some aging veterans that are trying to compete for a spot. So the way I look at it with Morgan, and I've looked at it probably for, I don't know, the last 365 days and change, is like they're kind of stacking the deck for Jordan Morgan to have success. I like Rasheed Walker. I like what he does. I think he's a little bit of a liability in the run game. Whether or not Jordan Morgan gets the de facto at some point to be the left tackle, or like you mentioned, the right guard, I think they really want him to work out, for better or for worse, that he was a 1st round pick. I know fans obviously, are clamoring that, hey, you had 1st round value on this guy. He basically didn't play at all last year. Most of that was due to injury, but I think they're going to, at some point, if Rasheed Walker stumbles slightly, whether it be with injury or just lack of performance, whether that's in the season or even in training camp or preseason, they're going to give that to Jordan Morgan, is my guess. It's not a bad thing to have. They basically have 6 guys that were like, hey, this is going to be an interesting carousel. We'll probably, as we get more into July and August, we're going to put the best 5 out there more and more from Guti and Matt LaFleur. But at the end of the day, I think it is Jordan Morgan's opportunity to win, but it's definitely Rasheed Walker's, opportunity to hold tight and make it, hey, this is my spot. I'm going to hold this as long as I can. You guys might have to pay me. And if you don't have to pay me, I'm going to go get a bag in the offseason as one of the premier left tackles in free agency. So I want Jordan Morgan to win a spot for sure, because I think it's just in the best interest for the Packers and with that talent. But if he can stay healthy, I think he can compete at either of those 2 spots. Where he ends up, I'm not so sure. I think it's for the other guys in front of him to kind of compete and hold him off. But great competition to have. And that's I'd say one of the 5 that I'm position groups that I'm really interested in over the next month to kind of see where it progresses through training camp.
With Steelers offensive tackle Dan Moore getting over $20 million per year in free agency, I'm sure Rasheed Walker is licking his chops for what he could potentially get on the free agent market this upcoming offseason. And to me, Rasheed is better than Dan Moore. So I'm sure that there are, some feelings from Rasheed that A, he should start, and B, if he does, he's going to get a huge payday. But that's going to be kind of an interesting conversation, because if Morgan all of a sudden wins the left tackle job and is just the starter, and Rasheed is like the rotational tackle or like the next guy up, I mean, Rasheed is like losing millions of dollars by the game by not starting and being out there. That's going to be an interesting conversation. If I were him and his agent, I would probably just demand a trade in that situation. There's not a lot of teams, though, that are looking for a starting left tackle or even right tackle at this point, unless there's an injury. So it just becomes, my guess is we're going to see a rotation between Jordan Morgan and Rasheed Walker, that they'll both be out there and getting some snaps. But that's a really interesting one to keep an eye on. We're being joined by Matt Froehlich, Pack-A-Day Podcast. You can find him on social media at Matt_Frey_. I want to talk about this wide receiver room. And I want to start by saying, if you just had to predict right now, I know that there's maybe not a true number 1 wide receiver in Green Bay, at least at the moment. Maybe somebody develops into that. I don't think it matters as much as people want it to matter. What I care about less is who's number 1 and more who's the go-to for Jordan Love in key situations. And maybe just by default, that's the number 1 wide receiver, whatever. But it's 3rd and 10. You have to have it. It's a goal line situation. You have to have it. Games on the line. You have to have it. If you had to predict right now, who is Jordan Love's quote unquote go-to receiver in those key situations, who do you think it's going to be?
Yeah, I think it's, kind of a passive answer, but it's going to be Romeo Dobbs for me. I just think there's been those different opportunities in his first start in Lambeau. Obviously, it was a big connection with Romeo Dobbs on the goal line there. There's been multiple third downs over the years where they've been able to connect. And I think it's just the continuity they've had. That's not to say, I think that's maybe my answer for August and September when they're playing preseason and regular season games early on, but that answer might change pretty drastically once we get into November and December football. And that could be Jaden Reed, that could be Matthew Golden. But at this point, Romeo Dobbs, I think, has proven that he's kind of the safety blanket, if you will, kind of like what Randall Cobb ended up being for Aaron Rodgers at the end of his career. And when he came back, also kind of was even that as he got a little bit longer in the tooth. So I say Romeo Dobbs right now. I'm not like thrilled by that answer. I think he's deserved it at some point. Obviously, all the receiving core, I know we'll get into a little bit here too, like they need to shore up those drops. The drops were significantly impactful this last year, and I think that's just something that overall everyone needs to work on, and Dobbs included. So I would say Dobbs right now, but don't be surprised in 2-3 months if you ask me the same question, if it's changed to one of those younger receivers who I want to be the go-to guy. It's just like right now that seems like 87's the main dude that Love's looking for on those go-to plays.
We're in lockstep on that. I think it's Romeo Dobbs as well, and I am excited to see what he can do this year. He looks ultra locked in, motivated, and I think he does just have a little bit more of that connection with Jordan Love. I'm not talking about like Rodgers Nelson or Rodgers Devontae here, but I do think that there is just a little bit more of that synergy there, and I do think there's an opportunity for him to kind of be that guy in some of those key situations. I want to throw an idea by you and just get your kind of thoughts on it and how this could potentially work. I think last year we saw Jaden Reed second half of the year. I think some injuries played a part in this as well, but just kind of had a little bit of a hitting of the wall and didn't have the same second half that he did in the first half. And I'm kind of wondering, Jaden Reed did a lot of the punt return stuff. He did a lot of the gadget stuff. I kind of just want Jaden Reed to go out and play wide receiver in 2025. And I think now if you do keep Mecole Hardman on this roster, I think Mecole Hardman can be your punt returner. I think you've got both Mecole Hardman and Savion Williams, amongst others, once Christian Watson comes back as well. You have a lot of different receivers who can do a lot of that gadget stuff. Heck, you can even line up some running backs to do some of that gadget stuff as well. Maybe Marshawn Lloyd can do some of it, but they have the pieces to do that. I kind of want to see Jaden Reed go out and play wide receiver, do less of all the other stuff. And now that you have some of these other guys who can do a lot of that same stuff, and quite frankly, I think Savion Williams and Mecole Hardman might even be a little bit more gadget worthy and even being able to be used in those ways, maybe even a little bit better, and even be, in Mecole Hardman's case, a better punt returner than Jaden. I think that can kind of help everyone, where you end up with a better punt returner, you end up with better gadget plays, especially again, getting Savion Williams involved in there, I think could make a lot of sense. And you allow Jaden Reed to just go out and be the best receiver that he can possibly be. I think it can kind of be a win-win-win situation. You can tell me I'm an idiot if you think I'm an idiot.
No, I don't think you're an idiot. I think that makes a ton of sense. I don't know if this is like, NFL league-wide thing, but I just tend to see that the Packers, every time they bring in, a rookie, or not even a rookie, a first year, second year guy that's, somewhat athletic, they're always trying him at punt return or kick return. And maybe that's just a small sample size over the last couple of years, but I don't know if other teams do that. It seems like, I would like if they had a specific guy like Hardman or like Savion Williams who could, might fit that, example, or I guess that stereotype, but actually is more prone to do that. And I just feel like they've done that over the years, where it's like, hey, we kind of want this guy to develop, whether it be on the offensive side of the ball or the defensive side of the ball, but they kind of stunt his growth a little bit, having them be a punt returner or kick returner. We know Keyshawn Nixon has basically said, I don't want to do that anymore. So they went ahead and essentially got two guys, one in free agency, one in the draft, and Savion Williams. But I agree. I think, the 2024 season, that was Jaden Reed, was like high highs to start the year and then very, very low lows. I mean, significant drop issues in 2024 compared to 2023. I like the way they were running the offense when Malik Willis was out there. I think there was probably too much gadget stuff and too many, jet sweeps. I still think that is part of what he needs to be on the Matt LaFleur offense. That is kind of the straw that stirs the drink for them. I don't think he's ever going to be like this, 90 plus catch, receiver. I just think he's going to need to get a lot of touches to make it flow for everyone else, get other guys involved, whether it be in the run game and, in the pass game, in the short yardage with maybe Tucker Kraft and some of these other, smaller receivers. But I agree. I think Jaden Reed has the potential to be the most impactful offensive player for them, probably outside Jordan Love and Josh Jacobs. And it might not be in, a stretch of volume or targets or touchdowns, but I think he is the guy that, like, if they can focus in him on just playing receiver, actually having him more of as a weapon in the the vertical passing game or over the middle, I think that's huge. And I like you kind of said, like, I was a little disappointed in what that back half of the year looked like, because I was hoping he would make some significant strides last year. He didn't. And then we saw, there's just the plethora of drops that they had across all those receivers. So yeah, let's let Jaden Reed focus on the offensive side of the ball. Let's let Savion Williams or McCole Hardman or whoever ends up being the punt returner or kick returner focus on that, because I think that'll be their primary role if and when they make the team. But yeah, let's let Jaden Reed just be kind of more of a stud in the offense and learn the receiver position. And if it is more of an end around stuff or, jet sweeps or just those, orbit motions, I'm totally fine with that, because I think that's where he definitely can succeed.
You're listening to Matt Froehlich, Pack-A-Day podcast, right here live from the 1250 AM and 105.7 FM, The Fan Studios, and powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. You can find him on social media at Matt_Frey_. In your ideal world, Matt, how does this wide receiver depth chart look when the Packers break camp? And then maybe more specifically, once Christian Watson comes back from injury, who do you want on this roster? And, who do you want kind of getting your primary targets, and who's maybe a little bit more in that kind of backup role?
Yeah, so I start now. It's pretty chalky, again, kind of like my Dobbs answer, but the four that I look to is Reed, Golden, Dobbs, and Wicks. Wicks is kind of that could be, I want him to do well. He could be easily shifted out with Watson at some point when Watson comes back. Loving to see that Watson is ahead of schedule with the ACL. I mean, that is incredible. I'm still, biting my tongue and crossing my fingers that will be the case as it comes early in the season. But those are the four. At that point, that's one of the competitions that I'm so fascinated by. There's so many receivers on that roster. We already talked about Savion and McCole Hardman, where their opportunities could be. Then we have Bo Melton and Malik Heath. We know the conversation around Bo Melton, where he's trying to line up either side of the ball or any position really at this point. Like, there's just so many players at that receiver position that I think at some point they absolutely have to make a trade. If they don't, they're going to be losing out on a significant amount of value to cut some guys. I know you had talked maybe a couple months ago, Andy, maybe right after the draft, of like cutting a few of these guys, seeing who can get back on the practice squad. I think that will happen. It's just a matter of like, can we get some value with the back half of the roster, whether it's, Melton, whether it's Heath, whether it is, Dobbs or Wicks. There's been conversations of trades for both of them. I think they like both of those guys' talents a lot. I know every single offseason, last 2 or 3, we've had, stats that come out about Dontavian Wicks and just how explosive he can be. Dobbs with the injuries, and the concussion concerns, I don't know what his trade value would be, but I look at those 4 being the primary ones at that point. Then like the 5th and 6th, I kind of leave it up to, Savion Williams, obviously making the team more than likely. And then if they still need McCole Hardman at some point, I assume he'd make the roster. But, once you get past that, it's like, are they really going to keep 7 receivers? That kind of seems crazy. So I feel like it's in their best interest to move someone via a trade. Otherwise, you're going to have some of these guys that, are probably going to get snagged if you cut them, and you're not going to get an opportunity to add them back to the practice squad. Guys like, Cornelius Johnson, which would be great to get in the practice squad, just like he was last year. I think he'll be able to slip through, but there's just so many receivers right now that it's very difficult. And especially if you're holding out for Christian Watson to come back sooner than later, it only makes it more difficult. So I like those top 4. That 4th one with Wicks/Watson, I'm interested to see when that can come back, but I like where they're at. And as far as the primary receiver, kind of what you asked earlier, like, I want Golden to be that guy. I was loving what, the strides he was making in minicamp to be able to, work with the ones right away. That's amazing. So hopefully he can be, a primary one receiver, kind of what you said too. I don't think they have a number 1. I don't think it's even in the team's best interest right now, talent wise and just development wise, to say we have a number 1 receiver, but it's a good problem to have. But at some point it's going to be a little disappointing, because there's going to be a couple guys that are cut. We're like, damn, what could have been with Malik Heath, or what could have been with, insert receiver. So we'll see what happens, but it's definitely a interesting competition through this, training camp and preseason. And I think it's less of this, I was over the last couple of years of like, hey, we kind of have our core. We just got to figure out where they're slotting. We're going to have a core, and you guys are going to have to try to battle into that core to make the roster, which is going to be kind of fun to watch.
Fun to watch, and certainly a good problem to have. Matt, before we get you out of here, Training camp coming up here in about a month. What are you most looking forward to? What are you going to be keeping an extra eye on?
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I already got it circled on that Wednesday. Might make it out there. If not, I'm definitely going on Friday, which will coincide with the owners meeting. Not sure if I'll get to that. I got the tickets there, so we'll see if I ever make my first owners meeting. But just the competition and the new faces. That's my biggest thing. I love getting out there for that first training camp whenever I make it and looking at some of these new guys. Like, how big does Aaron Banks look? Just Anthony Belton, see a monster like we think. What sort of impact can some of these guys maybe we didn't see last year do? I definitely look for like Marshawn Lloyd, like want to see him stay healthy and in the preseason. And then I think just those 5 groups of competition, I've kind of hinted around them, but the offensive line group, corner groups, I think they're going to stay lean there. What the edge kind of looks like, receivers, of course. But it's there's just all this talent, right? And you look even past, when you get in those 60s, 70s, 80s, as far as players on that roster, those back end, like who are those guys that can impact? And every single year, there's at least a player that I go to at one training camp and I'm like, wow, that guy just flashes. Hopefully he can make the team. Generally speaking, it's usually a coin flip if they can do that, but it's just all the competitions and, what sort of new wrinkles maybe Matt LaFleur can bring to the offense. And then Jeff Hafley, like giving him more and more of these pieces through free agency or the draft, or he's going to line some guys up. It's kind of almost this trend where the Packers are very, very versatile on the offensive line. It's going straight over into the defense, which is a blast to have. And especially as some of these younger pieces they've drafted, I'm excited to see what that chess, game looks like for Hafley on the defensive side.
Yeah, I cannot wait. I think it's going to be a really fun and exciting training camp. You get a couple joint practices in there as well. Preseason family night. Should be epic. I cannot wait for any of it. I know you're going to be doing a great job covering it over on the Pack-A-Day podcast. Matt, what do you got coming up and where can we find you on social media?
Yeah, Pack-A-Day podcast episodes coming out always on Saturday with Janelle Mackey and Eli Berkovitz. Working on a couple guests through this, dead zone, if you will. I know we call dead zone a couple different eras between the end of free agency and the draft, but truly just getting ramped up for training camp and trying to get some people in here that can support us with the Pack-A-Day podcast. Obviously, that's the main content I'm putting out. You can still follow me and interact with me on Twitter at Matt_Frey_. DMs are open if anyone's ever traveling in for training camp or anything around the game. I always like to give some people the plug because I do live in Green Bay or at least around the area like yourself. So feel free to reach out if anyone's got any questions, places to park, to tailgate, to a local saloon or dive bar or some great place to eat at. Feel free to reach out. Always happy to help you guys out.
Appreciate everything that you do, Matt. You do an unbelievable job covering the team, and of course, everything you do, of course, on the Pack-A-Day podcast as well. Couldn't do it without you, and I appreciate you taking some time today to chat right here on the radio show as well. We'll do it again soon. You enjoy your Thursday, and we'll talk soon, my friend.
You bet. Thanks, Andy.
You bet. That's Matt Froehlich. Again, find him on social media at Matt_Frey_. We'll be right back with our Potawatomi Sportsbook final thought of the day right after this. We are back here on the Pack-A-Day Radio Show. Thanks so much for joining us today. Again, my name is Andy Herman. A huge thank you to Matt Froehlich for joining us this past segment. You can find him on social media again at Matt_Frey_. Also a reminder that the Mason Crosby Show with Mitch Thunder Nellis coming up here 9 to 11. We're going to talk to Mitch and Mason momentarily. Also make sure to come say hi to Steve Sparky Pfeiffer today and tomorrow as he broadcasts live from Summerfest at the Hole-in-One contest starting at 2 p.m. with Wisconsin Sports Daily served up by Wendy's on 1250 a.m. and 105.7 FM, The Fan. We talked about the Brewers already, Tommy. We talked about Jacob Mizorowski. I got a question for you, but in order to do it, we got to get to our Potawatomi Sportsbook final thought of the day. Let's do it.
You got to do some smart thinking.
It's time for Andy Herman's final thought of the day.
What are you thinking?
Powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook.
What the hell were you thinking?
You're listening to the Pack-A-Day Radio Show on 1250 AM and 105.7 FM, The Fan.
All right, Tommy, here's my question for you. We're only going to go back to like the 90s here and then and beyond, but what has been the most exciting Wisconsin sports rookie like debut / like the most excited that you were for a rookie in Wisconsin sports history? Because I think it's a really I think Jacob Mizorowski is just the answer, to be honest. I think he is going to be number one on this list. So here's some names that I'll throw out to you. Ryan Braun, certainly the way that he came up right away as a rookie was massively exciting. He immediately made an impact. I think he's in the conversation. And then Jacob Mizorowski, I can't quite get there at the same level with Jackson Churio this past year, although that was certainly a heck of a debut as well. And there was certainly a lot of excitement there. From a Packers standpoint, I don't think there's one that actually has captured the imagination quite the way that anyone on that Brewers list even has. Javon Walker came in as a rookie and was kind of exciting, but like you think Aaron Rodgers did not get a chance to play right away. Jordan Love did not get a chance to play right away. Brett Favre was not a rookie. Reggie White was a free agent. Charles Woodson was a free agent. Like there hasn't been like AJ Hawk is like the 5th pick as a linebacker, but that certainly did not capture the imagination the way that any of those players did. From a Bucs standpoint, Giannis as a rookie was a scrawny, 18-year-old. Like he did not capture the imagination that way. Brandon Jennings in that 55-point performance or whatever it was, certainly maybe in that conversation. Glenn Robinson as a rookie. But if you look at like rookies that have done and caused the excitement that Mizorowski has so far, I think you might be looking at Ryan Braun, Jacob Mizorowski, and that might be the list. Again, maybe a Brandon Jennings with how he came out of the gate. But I can't think of any other rookie that's even in that conversation in Wisconsin sports.
I think you are missing one kind of big one, Jabari Parker.
Oh my goodness. We're not
Jabari Parker. I mean, not that it worked out great, but I'm saying as far as anticipation and excitement, he was the number 2 overall pick. And Andrew Bogut could probably be up there too. So I think that those are the two that I would put, could have had that hype level, but Mizorowski, I think, takes the crown for sure.
Yeah, I think I have to go Mizorowski as well. I would probably put Mizorowski 1. I'd probably put Ryan Braun 2. Again, I could maybe switch those 2 a little bit. Then I think it gets a little bit different. Probably the most excited that I would have been even in that conversation. And I do understand the 2 that you're talking about. Bogut is definitely a good one to bring up as well. But I think for me, that Brandon Jennings, that 50-plus point game and just the way he started his career definitely had a lot of people super excited at that time. That might be number 3 for me. But I think the answer, quite frankly, is just Jacob Mizorowski. And I know that we can be prisoners of the moment. I totally get it. I'm trying not to do that, which again is why I think maybe Ryan Braun could be that answer as well. But outside of that, not a lot of rookie performances that have captured the imagination the way that Mizorowski certainly is doing right here, right now. We got a lot more to talk about with Mason and Mitch here in just a moment, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more Pack-A-Day Radio Show right after this.